when you have internal data from your brand, specifically, whether it's sales data, sometimes my fashion clients will say, hey, this piece is really popular right now because it's the kind of boots that Lana Del Rey wore. So now everybody wants to buy them, like a celebrity or something like that. Well, boom, you have a story right there with proprietary data straight from the source.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Magic PR Show. I'm your host, Paul Andre de Vera. Today, we have Bri Godwin Huyke, who's a digital PR manager at Journey Further. With an impressive track record spanning over 7 years in the industry, she has consistently secured coverage in her clients in highly authoritative publications such as CNBC, USA Today, Fox, NBC, Business Insider, and the New York Times. As a digital PR manager at Journey Further, Bri leads a team of exceptionally talented professionals championing both client and team success. Bri, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Thank you, Bri. I remember actually running into you at Brighton SEO. It was funny because I was reaching out to you and I was like, wait a minute, you look familiar. And then I rewatched the Brighton SEO video I shot. I was like, hey, there you are.
Yeah, I was like, I knew I'd seen him with your videos and stuff. So yeah, it's great to connect again.
Love it. Okay, so I want you to go ahead. I know there's so much more about you. I know I had a brief introduction. Can you please introduce yourself and please walk us through your actual career journey?
Yeah, of course. So as you said, I worked in digital marketing for about 7 years, majority of my career in digital PR. I started out right out of school, right out of college, working in digital marketing, building websites mostly for brands and local businesses and that type of thing. But overall, I just really had an itching to be in PR. I love the news. I wanted to contribute to the news. I thought maybe at one point during school that I wanted to be a journalist. And then I just really fell in love with PR and I knew that that's what I wanted to do. So after working kind of more traditional, like I said, web building and stuff for a year, I applied for this PR job and it was at some content marketing firm called Fractal, pretty big in the digital PR space. And that is really where I started my career. And that really took off for me. So I worked at Fractal for a little bit over 4 years and they really taught me everything that I know about digital PR and about, doing PR mostly for SEO and for links and that type of thing. So worked there. I started out at the bottom as like a associate, entry level. Like I said, learning how to send pitches, creating relationships with journalists, working with my clients, learning multiple different verticals, creating campaigns, and then really worked my way up over the course of the little bit over 4 years that I was there. Like I said, working with clients, championing success, helping with their goals for organic results, and worked my way up to a manager and now I work at Journey Further US. So Journey Further does have their main office in the UK. They've been in the US for almost 2 years now. So I've been with the team for a little bit less than a year as a digital PR manager, kind of building out the team here. Like you said, oversee an amazing team of digital PR professionals in the US, and we're really just working on continuing to grow our proposition and really champion client success and really grow digital PR as a whole in the United States. The UK really does digital PR extremely well. Journey Further digital PR department is really a force to be reckoned with, and we're just really excited to do that here in the US as well.
Love that. So, okay, when you thought about digital PR, what of it specifically actually made you so interested in it? And you mentioned news. I mean, what's so interesting about digital PR? Why not look in some other field in marketing?
Good question. I don't know. I like I said, I really love the news. I'm a very avid reader of the news, kind of always staying on top of everything. So I love pop culture. I love sports. I even like to read political news or world news. Like, I just think it's almost, it sounds silly. I just really love that we have all of this knowledge at our fingertips. And I really respect and admire journalists for what they do and the way that they're constantly keeping us informed and up to date and all the things and everything going on. So I don't know, maybe I'm just romanticize it. I don't know what it is, but I remember when I worked at my first agency, when I was just building websites and stuff like that, it was a kind of a smaller locally owned agency in Tallahassee, the city where I went to college. And there was one PR person there. And I remember kind of seeing her work, and she was always like running around on phone with journalists, and she would get coverage in the paper or maybe like a national headline every now and then. And it was just like so cool and so exciting. And I was just so drawn to it. And I was like, that is what I want to do. And so, like I said, I looked into it and I found a good job that ended up being such an amazing doorway to help me build my career. And I love it. I love creating stories. I love being a source that journalists want to go to when they're writing a piece or, something like that. And at the end of the day, too, I really think, in a lot of articles too, journalists are extremely helpful. They're putting out a lot of information to, and like I said, inform the people or educate them, help them with a problem, something like that. So getting to be a part of that is really, really special. And I think it's incredibly useful and helpful. And I, like I said, I really love being a part of it.
Love that. So I'm curious now, like, what was like some knowledge or specific skills that you think was necessary to actually break into the field?
I think the biggest thing all PR people do and should do, just like knowledge or skill, is, like I said, just reading the news all the time and really kind of learning how to see a little bit of everything going on. So, like I said, I love sports, I love pop culture, politics or state news. I'm always trying to keep an eye on what's going on, even if it's a state across the country, something like that. I really prioritize staying on top of the news, and be a little daunting, but like that's what you have to do in this field, especially when you work with a wide variety of clients across a lot of verticals like I do. So just, I don't know if that's really a skill, but it kind of is. I've kind of just learned how to kind of become a little bit of a subject matter expert a little bit across the board, and just staying on top of the news and making sure I have a pretty deep understanding of what's going on from multiple different points of view and stuff as well. So I think that that's an incredibly important skill that I've fostered to really make sure that I know what journalists want. You need to stay on top of what's going on. And then, of course, too, there's some more technical skills, I think, like pitch writing, subject line writing, that kind of thing, quotes and stuff for your clients. I really have to give, like I said, all of the props to Fractal. They did and do an amazing job training entry-level employees, which I was at the time, training them up and really letting them, giving them the tools that they need to succeed so they are successful when it comes to writing good pitches, crafting like the type of pitch specifically for what a journalist wants. And I really believe in that method. And I teach it at Journey Further as well, making sure that you're reading what the journalist is covering and writing a pitch that's perfectly tailored to them, or a really good eye-catching subject line. So just really making sure that you hone in on your writing skills, but also your research skills, so you know exactly who you're writing for when you're sending pitches.
Love that. Love that. Did you have any like mentors or anything like that? Or like, I know you mentioned you had Journey Further as a great place to learn it, but do you have anyone specific that maybe you can follow?
Yeah, I think one of my biggest mentors is actually my supervisor. She's the associate director of digital PR at Journey Further. Her name's Dominica. She is amazing, and she really helped me in terms of my career. I remember we worked together at Fractal when it came to kind of making sure that the campaign you're creating is newsworthy, and really, like I said, like making sure it's what a journalist wants to see.
Okay.
I think sometimes when you work in an agency and you're working with clients, the clients really want their brand to be the get all of the great, they want their brand to be maybe the center of the story, but sometimes the journalists want something, a little bit about the brand, or maybe they just want some helpful quotes or something like that. And so I have to always kind of remind clients, like, if we make this too advertorial, sometimes it might turn journalists away or something like that. And Dominica was really the one who helped me teach me that, and really, I think, empowered me to make sure that we're always keeping that in mind if we're making campaigns or if we're working with clients. There's a time and a place to be really advertorial or really push the brand specifically, or maybe it's just a story that the brand can really contribute to, and you really need to know the difference. I think that we work really hard in digital PR to make sure that our campaigns are newsworthy, but also make sure that they tie to the client as well. It's a very delicate balance. And she was instrumental in making sure that I was doing that for my clients. And it's just such a skill that I've learned. And I really appreciate her helping me with that, because it's something that we always have to consider in the agency world.
I love that. So, speaking of Journey Further, you are actually, you mentioned that you're building a team there. So it's actually a new arm of the agency. Can you tell us, like, how is this looking like, and how you're building it? Who are you looking for, so we can get an idea of what a digital PR team looks like?
Yeah, absolutely. So, like I said, I really do have to give the credit to Dominica. She was the first hire in the department, so she's been helping build it as well. So, we are, like I said, Journey Further in general is newer to the U.S. We've been in the U.S. for about 2 years, and in the digital PR department, we kind of segment it with Dominica, who is the associate director, and then I am the manager, and we have what we call strategists under us who really lead day-to-day client comms, and then we have associates who spend majority of their time doing outreach. So client comms is of course incredibly important. You really want to make sure, especially I've found in digital PR, especially in the US where it's not as common as in the UK, you really are starting client education almost from scratch sometimes, maybe you'll have one person who's really bought in and really understands the importance of links, but you have 3 or 4 points of contact that you really need to get bought in, and you really need to teach them about it. And that's really what our strategists do. They really make sure that they're educating clients, letting them know what we're doing, why we're doing it, what our processes are. And once you really take the time to invest in that, like I said, you really get them bought in. And when you start getting them the results and they start seeing the improvements of their site and their brand, they get really excited. So those are really key members of our team. And then the more kind of like entry level or associate level ones, like where I started out at Fractal, like I was talking about earlier, the ones who we train up, like I said, make sure that they have the skills when sending pitches and creating relationships with journalists, doing outreach to make sure that we're constantly making those relationships, getting the content out there to get the coverage that we want. So it is a highly growing team. I think we went from one who was Dominica, because she was the first hire, to a team of, oh gosh, you're putting me on the spot. I think we have like almost 10 people now.
Wow,
9,
that's huge.
something
That's
like that. Yeah,
in
in a little bit over a year, and our client roster just keeps growing at an extremely fast rate as well. Yes, we are always hiring. Check out the Training for the Careers page, but it's just been an amazing to see. And like I said, and I talk, a lot about how I started out entry level, and I was really trained, and people really invested in me, Dominica being one of them, to make sure that I was trained up. So I really just love and appreciate doing that with my team as well.
Love that. So it seems like you've been doing a lot of campaigns. So either whether it's a Fractal or a Journey Further, what was like the most memorable campaign you worked on so far?
Oh my gosh, that is the most hard to answer question, because there's just so many. I would say I have like a personal love and passion, I guess, for personal finance. I worked a lot with clients in the personal finance sector, and I feel like I always tell people in the US, like, it's just been, majority of my career has been in these tough economic times. If you hear that, little phrase going around a lot. So I find that journalists are really, if they're covering personal finance content or helpful personal finance content, they get a lot of readership because people are really looking for that education. So I had a client who, it was in the personal finance space, and we did a campaign around rent prices, because that has been huge in the news. And we just looked at average rent prices by state and how fast they had been increasing and what that meant for, the normal everyday American, that kind of thing. And it got really great coverage, including the New York Times, which is amazing. So that is, an amazing top tier publication, of course. And I just remember that being such an amazing day. I remember like working really hard with my team, making that campaign. And it was a really client of mine that was really near and dear to my heart. So it was just awesome to see all of that come together and to see how successful the campaign was.
I would love to dive deeper into that campaign in particular. I mean, can you give us 3 tips on how we can launch something similar and successful?
Yeah, definitely. So campaign success, it's extremely important, and I can't talk enough about it. I rambled on and on about it in this conversation, just about reading the news and how important it is to read the news. So when I think of the success of that campaign, and when I think of the success of any campaign, you really need to identify maybe what's newsworthy about your client. And like I was saying earlier, it's a balance. Sometimes clients really want maybe their business model or their name to be front and center, but your client has the authority to speak on probably a lot. Your brand or your client has the authority to speak on probably a lot of different topics. So you really need to identify what topics those are and what's going on in the news that can tie to your brand or to your client. So that's the first place that I would start. So in this case, my client was a personal finance, source that people went to for information or cost comparison prices of big purchases and that kind of thing. So of course, rent prices was one of those things that was like really big happening in the news. Rent prices were skyrocketing and still are continuing to skyrocket. So we just saw that as an opportunity going on in the news that we knew that our client would be perfect to speak on. So from there, once you've identified that, I would really think about, okay, what in these topic areas can you provide that journalists want to see and want to have? So sometimes it's a problem that needs to be solved, or some sort of emotion, like some sort of idea or thought that will elicit a lot of emotion, make people want to click and read and gets them happy, gets them excited, something like that. Journalists are evaluated on the engagement of their articles. So when you're thinking about what is a journalist going to want to cover that people are going to want to click on and read, that is something that I would do too. So when it came to rent prices, it was, hey, like how expensive has it gotten? Let's really break down the numbers. Let's look at the percentage increases. Let's look at what states are the average prices are in these states and how that compares to wage increases, if any, or something like that. So it was kind of like, okay, we'll talk about rent prices and we'll actually look at the numbers. And that's the surprising, interesting information that a journalist wants to see. It's not always data. Sometimes it's like a graphic or a video or a stunt or something like that. But I would really just think about, what is the thing, the thing you're going to provide to the journalists that they're going to want to cover and other people are going to want to read. And from there, I would really act quickly, because the news moves extremely fast. So act maybe potentially as quickly as you can, especially if it's a story that is, breaking quickly or probably has a shelf life before you move on. And then I would, the way that you package it, the way that you pitch it to the journalist, you really need to make sure that you have that good information or whatever it is that they're needing. You put it in a very, very tailored pitch that is, perfect for the journalist that you're sending it to, with a good subject line that, is something that is going to be useful and helpful for them when they're covering it and when they're sharing it with their readers.
Love that. Love that. Speaking of pitches, I mean, are the pitches like maybe just 1, 2, 3 sentences? Or is it like, I mean, what are you like actually trying to say to them to so that they can get their attention and they can actually use your data set?
Good question. So I don't necessarily think there's a one size fits all answer, but I do love to lean on industry research. So Muckrack does a really great journalist survey every year, and I'm always looking at those questions they ask about pitches in particular and what journalists want. And it seems like over the past few years, it's been like, please keep it to 250, 200 words or less. So not necessarily 2 to 3 sentences, but I'm not writing them an essay by any means. I'm trying to get to the point, not bury the lead. If there's like some sort of information or something I know is perfect for this journalist, I know they want to see, putting it right at the top, putting it in the subject line, letting them know what we have, who it's on behalf of, and letting them know too, I'm happy to help provide anything else you may need. If you want a quote, if you want any more, questions, anything like that. I think that that's also incredibly important too, to let the journalists know you're not just sending this to them and then they're on their own to figure it out. You're a helpful, to be a good PR professional, you have to be a helpful source for a journalist. So making sure that you kind of check all those boxes and keeping it brief, but still having all of the good information they want is incredibly important.
Love that. And another thing you touched upon was data. What are some data sources that you go to for, just to at least kind of build a story together?
Good question. So data is incredibly useful. We found in digital PR, data-led stories, especially if there is some interesting change or shift or year-over-year comparison, journalists really, really like to see that. We like to lean on internal data as much as possible. So if your brand, I always ask my new clients, one of the first things I ask them is, do you have internal data that we can use? Because if they do, that is music to a journalist's ears. You can always tap into public data sources, and I have before, and they can be helpful. Like the CDC or Some other government organizations will have public data about cost of living or like inflation numbers. I think an inflation report comes out every month, things like that. You can tap into that and you can kind of analyze it or do a year-over-year comparison, but it's just not as proprietary because journalists, if they really wanted to, they could access that information themselves. But when you have internal data from your brand specifically, whether it's sales data, sometimes my fashion clients will say, hey, this piece is really popular right now because it's the kind of boots that Lana Del Rey wore. So now everybody wants to buy them, like a celebrity or something like that. Well, boom, you have a story right there with proprietary data straight from the source. So I really like and enjoy and really urge, brands to tap into internal data if they have it, because journalists, it's coming straight from the source. And if there's a good story there that can help in whatever vertical it may be, that's really what journalists love. And when they're the first ones to get their hands on that data, it makes it all the more sweet because they can have the exclusive access to share with their readers.
Love it, love it. Speaking of journalists, how do you actually build a network of journalists? I mean, I'm curious, like how do you network and build your network of journalists?
Great question. I really do love Twitter. I like to follow the journalists and, see what they're working on, what they prefer. Sometimes they'll put out some journalists, they'll put tweets out about their pitching preferences, which I always like to check. Always good to kind of check and see if they have anything like that. Sometimes they'll put out a request, I'm looking for this source or something like that. So there's a lot of good, information and resources on Twitter. But what I will say, and I always kind of preach, is you can, follow them on Twitter and keep up with them, but also like do it with good intentions. I follow a lot of journalists maybe I don't work with anymore or I've never worked with, but I just want to make sure that I'm staying on top of, like I said, all of the different verticals in the news. So I just really like to stay on top of their pieces and stay informed with their articles and actually be like a good faith consumer of their content, not just following them because I want them to cover something for my client. And, if let's say I wind down working with a journalist, but I'll continue following them, continue reading their stuff, and that type of thing, because they're human beings and they're very proud of their work, and I don't want to just always berate them being like, cover my client. I want to be, actual good consumer of their work and that type of thing. And it really does show if you're, building that network with journalists and you're networking with them on Twitter or maybe in person or anything like that. And what they cover and you're reading their pieces and staying on top of it. They really appreciate it. They really appreciate when you're engaging with their stuff. And if it does come down the line that you do have a brand or something like, or a story or something like that, that they can cover, that's great. But I would say treat them like human beings first, and human beings who work really hard on their pieces, because they do. And they always appreciate when I let them know that I'm actually like reading their stories and appreciating their work.
Love it. So, right, I mean, as we're coming close to the end here, I'm curious, like, how do you, where do you see digital PR going? What's the future? Any trends that you see that's going on right now in digital PR?
Well, I love that question because my answer is always, it is going to grow in the US.
Yep.
I really do see digital PR. Like, I started working in digital PR several years ago. It wasn't even really called digital PR. It was just like link building, content marketing, that kind of thing. It's grown so much. And I see the growth in the UK. I've seen how much it's taken off, and I'm a little jealous. I'm not going to lie, but it's just, there's an amazing market over there. And like I said, at Journey Further, the Journey Further digital PR team in the UK is huge. They've done amazing work growing that team over there, and we're really excited to do the same over here as well. It's traditional PR, I think, is just a little bit more common in the US. A lot of my like friends from school and industry pals and stuff like that work in traditional PR. They don't necessarily know or quite understand digital PR. So we're just really excited to grow it here in the US first and foremost. And I really do see that trend of it continuing to grow. I see other like agencies growing and more digital PR professionals in the US popping up, which is really exciting to see. And I see more brands buying in and realizing the importance of digital PR. So I think another trend that I see and I'm hopeful for is brands who are leaning to digital PR firms for, of course, PR for SEO purposes, but also just holistic PR as a whole. So I actually have a few clients who, of course, they want links, for their site for SEO, but they also love the other benefits that come from, the coverage as well, and that come from PR as well, like brand awareness, tapping into new markets, And if I have one brand who's kind of they've rebranded, and so they're really excited about like introducing themselves again, kind of in the market after they've rebranded and that type of thing. So we're working with like brand messaging as well as digital PR.
Oh,
Or I have fashion brands who maybe I'll do some product focused, pieces. So it'll be an affiliate link, but they're still getting the eyes on their product. They're still getting traffic to their product via that way as well. So there's multiple different benefits that come from digital PR, and digital PR professionals can do, the brand PR or the product PR or something like that. We kind of do it all. And I have clients coming to us so they can have one agency that does everything for them, including, of course, the digital PR for SEO.
love that. Love that. I'm totally with you. I see digital PR just blowing up here in the US, and I see myself even like as an SEO, like going towards the digital PR route. And so before we wrap up here, I'm curious, like for those that even want to get into the digital PR industry, like is there any book recommendations and podcast recommendations that you can share with us?
Great question. I don't know if there's book recommendations. I do love the Digital PR podcast as well. They are UK based, so I was a guest on there as well, talking about the digital PR in the US. But overall, if you're US based, they have some great tips that I think are pretty applicable to both countries. But one of my favorite digital PR resources in general is BuzzSumo, and their blog. Luis and the team over there are just killing it with helpful resources and content for digital PR professionals. So I would definitely check it out over there. They put a lot of research and data behind their blogs and their resources. So they'll put real world examples or something like that, which I really love and appreciate. So if you're really kind of curious about the trends or you want to learn more, I would definitely start there.
Love it. And how can people get a hold of you?
Yeah, so you can find me on Twitter and on LinkedIn. My name is Bri Godwin Huyke. On Twitter, I'm Bri Huyke. Huyke spelled Huyke. It doesn't look like it's pronounced. And you can find me Bri Godwin Huyke on LinkedIn as well.
Love it. Love it. Thank you so much, Bri, for coming on. And it was a pleasure to have you.
Thank you.